Greetings. Today's focus is, for the initial part of the show, is the fact that Tesla Cybertruck, 35 miles of range, went in tow. We also have our usual health tips, and then today is the beginning of trading as the factory reopens in China, and the stock is already up $67, so we review that as well. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. So, I want to also thank our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. Your presence makes a huge difference and is greatly appreciated. If you have any problems with our video or sound, please let us know. And we will follow through. Speaking of which, we'll get way better sound now. Thank you very much for your indulgence. So today's talk, well, there are a couple of housekeeping items. The first is that we wanted to review the fact that right now the stock is up $67 and into the late $800 range. Our forecast is that the stock should be up between $100 and $200 this week. The main reason we forecasted this was the pinning action that was being done last week, particularly towards the end of the week, had nothing to do with Tesla's fundamentals, and therefore we predicted the stock price being up. So we do have a couple of viewers who questioned that, and I wanted to note to you that I think that we got you on this one, but you will get us by the end of the week when the next round of pinning occurs. Wanted to first start off with a story. I went to Stanford University, and one of our goals is to identify things done at Stanford that would be useful in your knowledge and therefore your wealth. So the first request we made was that we asked you to look up something called Stanford and proactive skincare. The reason why we asked you to look this up is that if you go to the Stanford website, the lady who put that together is a Stanford dermatology doc. And what we asked you to do was to take time to view that 45-minute free podcast or listen to it. And then for every 10 podcasts on Stanford's eCorner that you listen to, that's $1 million worth of information. So what we wanted you to do is to take our take a dare, and what the dare is that is if you listen to those 10 shows, write me back and say I didn't get my $1 million worth of information, so you got to send me $1, and I'll send you $1 to cover the lost time that you had there. But more importantly, we want you to pick any of those 10 shows, there are about 400 of them, and view them. And the reason is that if you want to know what's happening in Silicon Valley 3 years before it gets to your local place, just go to our site and you'll be impressed. I did make an interesting, point here, and the point was that I just saw a sign that says Google to buy Tesla. I don't think that. I doubt that that's the case, but it's entirely possible because of the relationship between the founders of Tesla and the founders of Google, and the fact that at least one, either Larry Page or Sergey Brin, is on the board of Tesla. So it's possible, but I think very, very unlikely. So we wanted to, so what we wanted to cover today is, first of all, a short story. So there's a place at Stanford called a Roth House. And if you look on the map, you'll notice it's right in front of the president's house at Stanford. In 1944, there was a gentleman who was a student at Stanford, and he was a dishwasher at the all-girls dorm called Roth House. What happened is that when one of the sororities found out that a sorority member was dating the dishwasher, wind is blowing, trying to maintain. When one of the sororities found out she was dating a dishwasher, at the dorm, the sorority threatened to throw her out if she did not stop dating the dishwasher. So this lady continued to date and marry the dishwasher, and that dishwasher's name was David Packard of Hewlett-Packard, a multi-billionaire Stanford alum, and his wife's name is Lucille Packard. And at any rate, it's one of the famous Stanford stories. And what I tell my students at Stanford that I mentor is that you should be careful who you diss, because the nerd that you won't speak to or trying to get thrown out of your sorority may end up being your boss. And clearly David Packard built one of the biggest companies in the world and did very well, and obviously his wife did very well with him in the process. I kind of bring this up because there are all these stories about how Stanford works and why, and many of them involve huge companies that are out there, and it sort of shows the spirit of the people that are there then and now. So what I wanted to jump onto then is what's up with the Cybertruck? The answer is that there's another channel where they actually have been doing experiments, and one of them is to take a Model X with about 400 miles of range and then hook up towing behind it and determine what the length of the range of those vehicles is. And so what they found in the case of the Cybertruck, or in the case of the Model X, is they went from about 400 miles of range to 125 miles of range on a flat surface. What they then did was take that towed situation into the mountains, and in an uphill climb situation, they found that they got about 70 miles of range when in tow from that truck. So what they then did, so the bottom line and the reason why we said 35 miles of range when in tow is that if you're going uphill during the winter months, the battery has to warm itself to make sure that it operates properly. So you, in essence, ended up with a situation where you now have a warmed up battery operating in the mountains, and when it's doing its warming process, it can use as much as half the battery life. So if we're doing in a warm summer day up that hill, that's 70 miles, perhaps maybe 80 miles. But wintertime up that hill, when you're in tow, drops into the 35 to 50 mile range. So we wanted to highlight this. I want to thank Sem, one of our readers or viewers from Texas, on this issue and highlighting it. I want to share that there are a lot of people that have said that they've ordered the Cybertruck, but to be honest with you, I primarily live in the city in Washington, D.C. area, and parking is hard with a regular size car. I couldn't imagine trying to drive and park something that big, but with a few more viewers on Teslafaninsight, I may end up with a large enough garage to be able to stick that thing in. But I think it's a nice vehicle. I just think that with 70% of the domestic population in the United States in major cities, if you are in those cities, that's kind of hard to imagine where you're going to park that thing. Or frankly, not only park, but why would you want to do the Cybertruck when you could just get a robo Tesla to pick you up and drop you off, and you don't have parking fees during the day or have to, even drive yourself. So we'll see how all this plays out, but we thought that was kind of an interesting point. Again, this is not a slam on that vehicle. We just want to highlight the fact that, hey, the Cybertruck is a great vehicle, but there are some challenges there one might want to note. And what Sam shared with us is in Texas, it's the largest place of trucks being sold, and there are a lot of people that have things that are in tow. So it's important that you actually sort of take time to recognize some of the pluses and minuses that might be going on there. So the next thing that we wanted to dive into is right now we have an interesting circumstance going on, which is the stock price is up $67 pre-market. Now, I think that this is awesome. I believe that the numbers could and will and could go even higher for obviously a lot of reasons. What we're going to do today is, as soon as we finish this show, then what we're going to do is start to work on our first Patreon-only show for the week. And we're basically going to focus on some trading strategies that I think will help you make some great money. If you come in at the below $20 level, you get one extra show a week. If you come in at 20 or above, you actually get between 2 and 3 extra shows a week. And I think you'll be impressed with what we cover in terms of granular detail on great strategies for making great money. So please take time, therefore, to check out and sign up on Patreon. And then we'll look forward to you guys getting your first installment of Patreon-only private shows in a couple of hours once we have it up. At any rate, we wanted to, in general, encourage you to note that now that we had a viewer on Friday who wrote us and said, hey, nothing's going to happen with the stock in terms of it being up. And what I explained to him is that our forecast is that without the pin, just like 2 Fridays ago, the stock is going to accelerate nicely. And so what we're looking forward to is institutions no longer pinned being able to now buy the stock as, they have all these, Shanghai opening. They have a number of good initiatives going that should really drive the stock higher. So, again, we think we're in good shape right now. What we're looking for then is restart of production and a way to get that to market, even though the stores have been closed, because most of what can be done on sales, et cetera, could be done online. So what we're then focused on is the fact that we definitely think that you want to hedge your position if you can. That hedging will allow you to avoid. We're trying to cut down on the noise here. I apologize. Wow. So, in essence, what we're suggesting is that based on the structure that we covered in the shows yesterday, we actually expect right now that there's actually going to be a nice recovery of the stock while it's not being pinned. But by the end of the week again, the hedge funds need the price to drop, as well as possibly the same folks who did the initial activities. And now that this model's out there, you'll end up, I believe, in a situation where there are a lot of people losing money that may use that strategy to help force the stock price into a position that strengthens their ability to make money off the back end of that. So we look forward to reporting some good news in terms of what's going on. And it, I think that there's a lot of, I think there's just a lot of fuel under the stock right now. What we will be covering today is that, great. There's a comment there from Donovan regarding reducing shipments to China and increasing European shipments, based on the closure there as a way to definitely build numbers. I just think China is an amazing country in terms of their ability to get work out and therefore deliver earnings. So do not be surprised if the production and sales that were supposed to go for the Model 3 occur despite the challenges just described. So we're gonna, obviously we're doing another show tomorrow. We may actually do a second show today, depending on whether or not the stock gets beyond the 100-point up range. Maybe 150 would put it back, heading towards 900, which is kind of what we think is going to happen. And if it does, we'll probably come up with another show looking at news affecting it, why, hows. When the stock is back up again, don't forget, good time to hedge so you can preserve those earnings in case we go through another round of excellent technique to reduce this stock price. There's as we've shared previously, we kind of have homework for you guys, and one of them is you really want to. So one of the things we've noticed as we've kind of been surveying a number of viewers is that you have done very well in terms of owning Tesla and hanging on to it long term with some very large portfolios. I wanted to note to you that, in a private session on trading or possibly elsewhere, we wanted to encourage you to seriously consider interviewing a couple of large firms, because once you have more than $1 million in net worth in a stock, or especially 2, 3, 4, 5 million, you want to start interviewing other folks, because you actually get what I want to call world-class knowledge in terms of portfolio theory and how to manage the short and long-term ownership of that very expensive or valuable stock. So it's a really good idea. Even if you don't sign up with them, I want to encourage you to do some interviews. And I have names if you want folks at different firms. And frankly, it doesn't really matter to me. I just want you to make great money and not be hampered in your process, shall we say. So I wanted to review all this with you, because you're going to see, I think, a nice move in Tesla stock heading into earnings, and you want to be well prepared for that. So the final thing I wanted to cover is there's a certain calendar that operates, and different people control that calendar. So what we mean by that, what we mean by the calendar is, as you know, there's a 3-day rule after earnings hit, and then we have the stock moving nicely up. The thing that we wanted to note is that the further we move away from earnings, we start to enter the zone where all the institutions have purchased shares that they need, and then as they have their collection of stock, they now sort of mellow out, waiting for the next things that might influence their long-term purchases. So I kind of bring this up because we're in the zone now. We're kind of a week away, maybe a week and a half away from things really calming down. We're not there yet, so therefore I think we could see some nice movement, because the natural sort of zone of the stock really feels like between 850 and 950 right now. As we head into earnings, particularly if China is strong, we end up in the 1,000+ zone is kind of the general feel of things. And we look forward to covering this as it occurs, and being able to comment and encourage, how might you manage relative to that. The other thing that happens in this period is analysts tend to be more powerful because there's no company news to drive what's happening with the stock. So, those in general are what we're expecting. As I said, we're going to sign off here in a moment and move on to kind of what's going on with some option strategies that we have in mind in the private show. And so you might want to consider, at least at the $20 level each month, that will give you access to at least 2 shows a week, possibly 3. And when you're in a trading zone, as you can see from the movement of the stock, it's in a trading zone critical for you to have as much information and technique as possible to manage. We also want to remind you that we have our 1-hour options training kind of class on a one-on-one basis. And I think that you'll find that information excellent and valuable. And then we follow up with your ability to give us a call. The final thing I wanted to note to you is we're adding kind of a new level to our Patreon, which is a 1-hour sort of portfolio strategy update on a weekly basis. So if you're multi-million dollars worth of stock in and you don't have advisory help already, we're not going to tell you do this or that, but what we will do is give you more information with which to make better choices in terms of what's happening now and in the near term with the stock. And therefore, our goal with those 1-hour non-options, just portfolio theory planning, is that we want to say that, adding, maybe a 10 or 20% to what you're already doing relative to earnings in process is what our goal is. And we look forward to getting a chance to introduce that to those of you who don't need the help here, but want maybe a weekly review of what's going on and how to manage. Any rate, right now we're going to do some reading to find out if the plant has opened. I assume based on the stock price movement that it did, and we'll update you on that. But beyond that, it's just nice to not have the ping action there to help everybody get the money back that they lost in this craziness. Any rate, so I just wanted to remind you of our health tips. Don't forget, don't eat within 2 hours of going to bed, preferably 4 to let the food digest. Number 1. Number 2, 25 leg lifts will help ensure you reduce the chance of knee impact. also wanted to encourage you to not eat more than once a week fried foods, reducing chances of type 2 diabetes. Freezing to death out here, so it'll be nice to end the show right here, but wanted to thank all of you for joining us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, German au revoir, French lehitrot, Hebrew hoda hafez, Farsi, and in Jamaica we say, enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day, and bye for now.